And you are welcome to be visible or not. Just know that this is streaming, and actually, I don't know that any of you will be seen. Streaming, and actually, I don't know that any of you will be seen. Well, but apparently that was caught on YouTube. Shabbat Shalom. It is wonderful to be here with all of you to celebrate Shabbat and to bring in a time of peace and hope after what, at least for me, was a busy week. And so we join together giving thanks for the beauty of the day with the words of Maya Hayom. Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom, Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom, Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom, Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom, Maya Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. We continue with L'chuna Ranina. We continue with the candle blessings. I have a new setup today, so you won't see my candles, but if you've got your candles, feel free to go to them and light them. And we draw the light towards us. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. And we bless our children, young and old. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May the light of God shine on you, and may God be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God's presence be lifted up to you, and may God grant you peace. As together we say, Amen. You've got your wine or grape juice. I invite you to lift up your glass. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu. Zikaron le'maaseh v'reishit, ki hu yom techila le'mikra'e kodesh, zecher le'tziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, ve'shabbat kodshecha, ve'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. L'chaim. Now we continue with Lechuna Ranana from Psalm 95.
As we prepare for Lecha Dodi, we think back to when Lecha Dodi was first written in Sfat. Sfat was a place of exile. The Jewish people had been expelled from Spain, and it seemed like the world had ended. But then in Sfat, a new idea developed by Rabbi Isaac Luria, the idea of tikkun ha'olam, that by our actions, we're able to bring wholeness and repair the world. The mystics in Sfat created Kabbalat Shabbat, the Psalms that we sing on Shabbat, and Lecha Dodi, which comes from that time. And so on this Shabbat, we think of our rest, and we think of the wholeness and bringing wholeness into our world. Lecha Dodi.
Shabbat, Sabbath bride. Boi v'shalom, ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'tovola, toch emunei, am segula. Boi chala, boi chala, We join together in the end of Psalm 92. The righteous bloom like a date palm, like a cedar in Lebanon they thrive. They are planted in the house of Adonai, in the courts of our God they flourish. They still produce fruit in old age. They are full of sap and freshness, declaring that Adonai is upright, my rock, in whom there is no wrong. Yitkadam ve'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach yirteh ve'amlich malchuteh, ve'chayechon u'vyomechon, u'vchayedecho Beit Yisrael, ba'gala, ba'gala, u'vizman kariv, ve'meru amen, yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach, Le'alam ulam me'almaya, yitbarach, yitbarach, ve'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitromam, ve'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitala, shemei dekudesham brichu, le'la min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiran Belma, Vemeru, Amen.
We call the Baruch Hu the call to worship. And people think of it as, are you ready to worship? But prayer is about shaping who we are as people. It's not just a call to worship. We say one who rises from prayer, a better person, their prayer is answered. So it is also a call to action. It reminds us of the words of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel when he marched from the famous march from Selma to Montgomery. And these are one version of those words. For many of us, the march from Selma to Montgomery was about protest and prayer. Legs are not lips and walking is not kneeling. And yet our legs uttered songs, even without words. Our march was worship. I felt my legs were praying.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai Baruch le'olam. Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. We join together in a blessing for the beauty and mystery of the evening. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach she'arim, u'bitvuna meshana itim, u'machalif et hazmanim, u'mesader et ha'kochavim, b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or, u'ma'avir yom u'mevi layla, u'mavdil ben yom u'ben layla, Adonai tzvaot shemo. El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim.
I, the Eternal, have called you to righteousness and taken you by the hand and kept you. I have made you a covenant people, a light to the nations. This is the covenant I make with Israel. O place my Torah in your midst and write it upon your hearts. I will be your God, and you will be my people. Hate evil and love what is good. Let justice well up as waters and righteousness as a mighty stream. Where Israel, schooled in the suffering of the oppressed. You shall not oppress your neighbors nor rob them. You shall not stand idle while your neighbor bleeds. You shall beat your swords into plowshares and pursue peace. Violence shall no longer be heard in your land, desolation and destruction within your borders. You are my witness, says the Eternal, and my servant whom I have chosen. Know me, therefore, and put your trust in me. Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael. Praise to you who loves your people Israel.
We prepare for the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Rabbi Crystal, we can't hear you. You're still muted.
John Lewis offered these words. The civil rights movement was based on faith. Many of us who were participants in this movement saw our involvement as an extension of our faith. We saw ourselves doing the work of the Almighty. Segregation and racial discrimination were not in keeping with our faith. So we had to do something. Adonai, our God, you freed us from bondage in the land of Egypt. With courage, commitment, and in community, we cross the sea and we rejoice. We seek redemption again, Adonai, from the bondage of hatred, the slavery of poverty, and the evil of violence in the world. Give us the courage to toil for wisdom, justice, and understanding. May we rejoice again in our community, giving voice to one another in peace and harmony.
Adonai
ונאמר, כי פדה אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני ישראל. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Continue with the Shamru. V'shameru b'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat, la'asot et HaShabbat, Lidorotam berit olam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti leolam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti leolam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, tashamayim v'taretz, u'bayom hashvi'i Shabbat v'yinafash.
The blessings of the tefillah are about bringing balance into a world. The blessing, the first, avot v'imahot, according to the mystics, is a blessing overflowing with compassion. The Gevurot, our second blessing, is a blessing of boundaries. But when we bring them together, then we have the third blessing, the blessing of the name of the divine, Tiferet, the blessing of Yaakov, and that is the blessing of beauty. We continue with the tefillah.
Adonai, Sefatati, Sefatai tivtav, ufi agite ilatefa. Oh God, open up my lips as I begin to pray. Oh God, open up my lips as I begin to pray. Adonai, Sefatai tivtav, ufi agite ilatefa. Adonai, Sefatai tivtav, ufi agite ilatefa. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakom וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות, ומדם מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך הצלע ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
In these hours of rest and renewal, open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. May this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat. Prayer is not a shout to an empty void, answered only by its own echo. Prayer is the spirit within us, reaching out to the spirit of the universe. And prayer is that spirit responding to us. Baruch atah Adonai, Hamachazir Shechinato L'Tzion. Blessed are you, Adonai, who returns your presence to Zion. God, I thank you. You created this world full of beauty and love, peace and wonder, life and hope. You formed morning and evening, the sun and the moon, the water that I drink and the fresh air that I breathe. You created me, my mind, my heart, my spirit. All that I am is because of who you made me to be. The best gift you gave me is freedom. You built a world in which I can learn and grow, a world that is never completed, so that I may continue to enrich it. For all of this, for all of your creation, I thank you and praise you, God. Baruch atah Adonai, atov shimcha u'lecha ne'er lehodot. Praised are you, Adonai. Your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving.
Tasim le'olam. Shalom Rab Yisrael Amcha. Tasim le'olam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Yisrael Amcha. Tasim le'olam. Shalom Yisrael Amcha. Tasim le'olam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael. B'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rab Yisrael Amcha. Tasim le'olam. Shalom Rab Yisrael Amcha. Tasim le'olam. Tasim le'olam. Tasim le'olam. Baruch atah Adonai, mevarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. Take a few moments now to offer the prayers of our hearts. Oseh shalom b'mama, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imu. Oseh shalom b'mama, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imu. At each of our services, we take time to think of those in our lives, those in our community who are in need of healing, healing of mind, healing of body, healing of spirit. And on this Shabbat, there are many people that we're thinking of, not just because of general illness, not just because of the fact that we have so many in our community on a regular basis who are in nursing homes, in hospitals, who just need wholeness and healing of mind and body and spirit, but also because there are those in our world who are suffering from the ravages of coronavirus. And I invite you, whether in the chat on Zoom or the chat on YouTube, to offer those names. I will begin playing the first verse of the Mishaberach that we often sing, take some time to offer the names that have been put into either chat and then continue with the second verse. Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Ve'imotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. On this Shabbat, we are thinking of Rada, of Avi, of Susan, of Timothy, of Ruth, of Shauna. We are also thinking of Rosemary, Eric, Sam, Naomi, Mary, Latoya, David, Samuel and his caregivers, Rachel, Yehuda ben Brucha Esther, Howard, Arlene, Helene and her family, Stacy and her family, especially her parents. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema. The renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We can hold the slides for a moment until I get warmed up. And if you could just move away from the slides, great. As you can see, we're still coordinating everything technically. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And to begin tonight, I won't sing but the words of song. Go down, Moses, way down to Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. The spiritual stands at the heart of many of the seders that we have on Passover. It is a reminder also, thinking back to slavery, the liberation of Black people from slavery in the South. And it's also become an anthem for all who are oppressed. As a Jewish community, it reminds us of the plight of our ancestors, the challenges that we face throughout the ages. It calls all people who love freedom to remember all of the liberation stories and to fight to help all people who seek liberty and human rights. This is an important image this week when we think about the passing of Congressman John Lewis. The story of his life, his commitment to help others, those who are oppressed, ties in with our Torah portion this week, the book of Deuteronomy, because Deuteronomy is Moses's last address to the Jewish people. It's his farewell, his valedictory address. So let's look at Deuteronomy for a second, and then we'll think about Congressman Lewis. So Moses begins by retelling the story of the Israelites. Their story from slavery to wandering in Egypt in the desert for 40 years. It's divided then into 3 discourses. Each one recounts the laws that the people will follow in the promised land. He concludes with a charge to the future. Says, honor the ideals of the Torah. Don't go astray. And the famous words, I set before you this day, life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life that you may live. This week, as our nation has paid tribute to Representative Lewis, we've retold the stories of the civil rights era, and his life covers the arc of that time. We've also thought about the changes since that era. And he said, Congressman Lewis, when people tell me nothing has changed, I say, come walk in my shoes and I'll show you change. And his passing calls us to renew a commitment for justice and compassion in society. As I think of Congressman Lewis, I think of tremendous courage that he had, the courage of all of the people who were involved in civil rights in the 1960s. Very few people have participated in protests where their lives were at risk. Very few know that courage. I had the briefest and the smallest of experiences, but it was one that is different than the daily life for most of us in the United States. One December, I was in Istanbul. I was coming back from services and was in Taksim Square. Yes, that Taksim Square. It looked calm, but as I looked more closely, there were police in riot gear. I began to walk back through one of the main streets, and I saw people gathering with banners with protest signs. And then all of a sudden, after I'd gotten a few blocks, a police van with a water cannon, firing water at everyone, came forward towards us, and we ran down alleys in different directions. We went down one alley, came to another street, and there was a phalanx of police officers, shields, helmets, and batons. Ran away again. Later that evening, the demonstration grew violent. There was tear gas, there were arrests, people were injured. One person passed away. Just a few moments, but it opened the door. And tonight, I want to share with you some pictures of the civil rights era to help us remember the courage. The first picture comes from the lunch counter sit-ins in 1960. They went from February 13th to May 10th. The National Student Movement organized the sit-ins along with other groups. They practiced nonviolence. They were peaceful, but the protests turned violent. There was intimidation. There was striking out. There was hurting others. There were attacks. During that time, there were over 50 arrests. There was a bombing of one of the lead attorneys, the bombing of his home. But finally, the store owners and the protest leaders reached an agreement. On May 10th, 6 downtown stores began serving Black customers at their lunch counters for the first time. We think also of the Freedom Riders. The first ride, you can see the hopeful expression on people's face, began on March 4th, 1961. But it was no longer peaceful in just a few days. It was an era of tremendous violence, of attacks. It was one that we'd hoped to never relive again. The Ku Klux Klan attacked people when they came to bus stations. There were attacks in cities after city. There was a bombing just a day after the march, after the Freedom Riders started, where they tried to keep people into the bus. There was an undercover police officer who insisted that the door be opened, but the bus was bombed and destroyed. After much violence, after national pressure, in September of that year, the Interstate Commerce Commission issued policies and segregation ended. And lastly, we think of Bloody Sunday, the march from Montgomery to Selma. Rabbi Gibson and I, just about a year ago, were in Selma and Montgomery with a group of rabbis. We walked over the Edmund Pettus Bridge. The gentleman in the raincoat, the light-colored raincoat in the front, that was future Congressman Lewis. You see the police approaching, and then you'll see the beatings that took place. It was a horrendous event. The billy clubs, the attacks, the tear gas, the dogs. As much as we saw it in films like Selma, seeing the pictures, it becomes so much more real. And then there was Turnaround Tuesday, when the protesters were allowed to go over the bridge and the march continued. It was an incredible time in the United States. And in that way, we think of all of the accomplishments of Congressman Lewis. He went believing in nonviolence and believing in equality for all to become a champion of justice. This is one of my favorite pictures. If you look, you see President Obama in a white shirt. Next to him is Congressman Lewis and Michelle Obama on the other side. This is a symbol of progress that can be made. It's a powerful, powerful image. And just thinking about the different ways that we've seen Congressman Lewis care for others based on his experience. He worked for immigration reform. He was arrested with a group of congressmen to protest the injustice in the immigration system. He also marched in the Pride Parade in Atlanta. He said that as he fought for equality, so he couldn't think of not having marriage equality. He worked for gun safety. He worked for voting rights. And after voting rights were limited with a Supreme Court decision, he worked to try to restore full voting rights again. And he received the Medal of Freedom from President Obama. These were the accomplishments of Congressman Lewis. When we think in Judaism, very often we quote only the outstanding, the well-known texts. But you can just focus back to me. But there is discrimination and racism in Judaism. Yehuda Halevi, the medieval philosopher, said that human beings have 5 senses, but there's also a 6th sense of prophecy that's for the Jews. Some of the mystics said that all people have an animal soul, but the Jewish people have an additional soul, a soul connected to God. I reject these type of ideas. Instead, I look to the Torah, I look to the prophets, I look to the ideas, not that we're limited by time-bound fears, but the ideas that are so central to the eternal meaning of Judaism. In the book of Leviticus, we're called when we reap the harvest to leave the corners for the stranger and for the poor. We're called not to insult the deaf or place a stumbling block before the blind, not render an unfair decision, not to favor the poor, show deference to the rich, not to take bribes. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. Jeremiah, in his day, when the people went astray, said, "Do you think you are more a king because you compete in the trade in cedarwood? Your father ate and drank and gave justice and equity, and then all was well with him. He upheld the rights of the needy, then all was well." This is what it means to heed the word of God. Micah, the words we love. What is the eternal want of you? To do justly, love mercy, and walk modestly with your God. And Amos, let justice well up as waters, righteousness as a mighty stream. And when confronted with examining witnesses, then our ancestors said, everyone was created from a single human being, so that no one would say, my blood is redder than yours. No one would say, the world was created for me and not for you. And so, honoring the memory of Congressman Lewis at Temple Sinai, let's work with our Tikkun Olam Center. It's working with the Reform movement for the civic engagement process. I love in the documentaries looking at Congressman Lewis as he would cast his vote. I also love at Comic-Con his own comic books. But we're called, and you saw it in this week's highlights, to do three things. To mobilize Jewish voters to ensure 100% of those eligible in our congregations, and not just Jewish voters. I apologize for reading it directly, but everyone who's part of our community, everyone who's, regardless of faith tradition, is a part of Temple Sinai, to mobilize so we all vote, to combat voter suppression. There's so many ways that we do that, and we see so disheartening the efforts to limit votes today, and we need to work and do everything we can and work to engage voters, that we work for Tikkun Olam. And so we think of Congressman Lewis. We think of the great contributions that he's made. And I return to his words from earlier this evening. You are a light. You are a light. Never let anyone, any person, or any force dampen, dim, or diminish your light. Release the need to hate, to harbor division, the enticement of revenge. Release all bitterness. Hold only love, only peace in your heart, knowing that the battle of good over evil is already won. And again, I apologize for my words that might have seemed that were not inclusive, that we want to mobilize all voters. And we end with this amazing quote from Congressman Lewis. Nothing can stop the power of a committed and determined people to make a difference in our society. Why? Because human beings are the most dynamic link to the divine on this planet. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm just making sure that the technology is doing what I want it to do. Okay, we have just a few things going on this week. First, though it's really important for me to mention that our cantorial program is underwritten by a generous grant from Edgar Snyder, and that we're so grateful for his ongoing support of wonderful Jewish music at Temple Sinai. Just so you know, tomorrow morning, as always, we have our Torah study at 8:30 in the morning. There is a Zoom link in the same email that you got, the live stream or the Zoom link for this week. That is followed by our informal Shabbat morning service, again via Zoom or live stream at 9:15. And then what I think will be our final Havdalah as part of this COVID series at 8:45 tomorrow evening. We have our normal Parsha class, our weekly Torah portion class on Wednesday at noon, and Shabbat will be right here next week, 7 o'clock on Friday night, and then 9:15 on Saturday morning. You should also keep an eye out for a few different programs. Rabbi Crystal is leading a program on Mondays in August at 7 p.m. called Judaism in the 21st Century. It is free and open to the public, but registration is required in order to receive the Zoom link. There will also hopefully be a cooking class and some writing classes as we prepare for the High Holy Days, which are just around the corner. 2 months away, which I know seems like a long time, but it is not for rabbis and cantors. So that's what we've got going on. You should also make sure to register for the meet and greets with Rabbi Crystal. Those have been really wonderful. I was able to join one of them. And it's just also a really nice way to meet others in our community, even during this time where we are trying to be distanced, at least physically distanced. Anything else, Rabbi Crystal?
You got it all.
Okay.
And thank you to Jeremy for all your help and all of your patience with rabbis still working through the systems.
We are going to continue our service with our concluding prayers, beginning with Aleinu. If you choose, you may rise in body or in spirit. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, וגור עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. On this Shabbat, we think of those who have died at this time in years past. And if you are in a period of mourning, I would invite you to rise as you are able in body or in spirit, so that we can acknowledge you in spirit, and if we can see you as a mourner, and also so that you can show honor to your loved one. On this Shabbat, we think of Minnie Apter, Dr. Erwin J. Averbach, Nathan Andrew Backrack, Sam Baker, Emily Berman, George Berman, Corinne Blackman, Jean Brandsilver, Rita Cohen, Edna Cooper, Anna Diamond, Joyce Dutton, Samuel M. Eisner, Leo Gale, Vivian Gale, Leonard Gerson, David Lee Goldman, Rhoda Graff, Meyer E. Greenberg, Charles Hall, Ann Gale Rose Hodge, Maria Kadish, Grace Kaplan, Samuel Kaufman, Robert Klovsky, Bob Korenstein, Blanche Leibovitz, Molly Lappin, Rose M. Lefkowitz, Howard Levin, Dorothy Green Levine, Sydney Levine, Evelyn B. Levine, Erwin Lockhart, Morton Love, Joseph Minden, David Moore, Thelma Neft, Milton Rubin, Harriet Winnikoff Siegel, Morris Silverman, Thomas Statterman, Joan Price Tanzer, Renee Taylor, Abraham Taylor, Joseph Waldholtz, Bellerose Weil, Bert Weiss, and Erwin Zolt. We also think of those who have died in recent days and weeks. Ben Lofty, the grandfather of Marcy Kaufman, and Jean Farkas Podolsky, the mother of Joel Farkas. As we think of them, we say Zichronam Livracha, may their memories be a blessing. And I invite us all to rise so that our mourners need not stand alone as we recite the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon v'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael, v'hagalau v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevrach le'olam l'almei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shmei dekudesha brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'miran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama Rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the one who creates peace on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, to all who mourn, as together we say, and to all our world, as together we say, amen. With the words that Rabbi Crystal spoke about Congressman John Lewis, we think of how we ourselves can be part of building a world that is whole, a world where everyone is equal and respected, where there is love and where there is peace. Hold on. Got the wrong key here. There we go.
On Shabbat, we have a neshama yetera, an extra soul. And with this soul of Shabbat, may we be able to reach out to our dear ones, the people in our community, to people who are different than us. May we find that singular spark in everyone that nourishes and grows. And may we bring God's world of love. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And we hope to see you all at the Oneg. The link is the same as the Shabbat link, or you can use the link that was Oneg.